It's Reality Check with Craig Price.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me. Craig, shut up. Hey, I need you guys to do these things. I'm Craig Price, professional bastard. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Reality Check with Craig Price. This week, Jessica Pettitt is back to talk about her new project, I Am Safe Zone. We've had Jess on in the past, and she is becoming one of my favorite people. I don't get to see her very often, but when I do, the more I get to know her, the better I like her. She's funny, she's direct, and besides myself, she's one of the most realistic people I know, especially when she's talking about things in her topic, which is very often taboo and controversial, which is lesbian, gay, and transgender issues. You know, with this project, what she's working on is she is offering training to individuals, organizations, groups who want to learn what they can do to become more of a solution to the problem of discrimination instead of a passive bystander. You know, with all the stuff out there this past week regarding the Chick-fil-A and their CEO statement against gay marriage and their contributions to anti-gay marriages causes, this is a perfect time to have her on. Look, I'm married and have been for 8 years, and I'm very happy and very fortunate to do so. But I don't believe I'm so special that others can't have the same thing. I would hope others feel the same, but, you know, I know that's not even close to the truth. I'm also not in a situation where people are angry or offended that I wanted to get married or that I am married, minus my father-in-law. Because I know that if I was one of those people who I would feel just as angry and offended at the people who are angry and offended at me, which is just going to cause a vicious cycle of resentment and anger, which doesn't really work for anyone. So Jessica, I think she really helps bring some understanding to the situation, especially to people like myself, who I hope to be open-minded, but, you know, I'm not sure what I can do to help because it's not really part of my life on a daily basis. My inner circle of friends that I see on a regular basis are few, and as far as I know, none of them are gay. So I don't really deal with these issues directly, and I don't see how it affects my gay friends because I only see my gay friends on a intermittent basis on occasion, and we certainly don't spend our time talking about how they're mistreated. So regardless of how you stand on gay or lesbians and anti-gay marriage or for gay marriage or whatever, I hope for in the next 30 minutes or so you will open your mind at least and listen to the wonderful Jessica Pettitt. Thankfully, the drummers have stopped.
Hurry, the drummers have stopped.
So we got to... Blah, 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 blah.
Hi, Craig Price, how are you doing?
It's good to see you, Jess.
It's so nice to see you too. Okay, good.
Congratulations to CSP. CSP is certified speaking professional. So we'll just go right through it. But I do want to congratulate you on your CSP, which is a very big deal for speakers.
Thank you very much.
And of course, that familiar voice is Jessica Pettitt.
Hi.
And Jess, you've got a new project you're working on. It just came out.
Yes.
And it is called I Am Safe Zone.
Yes.
So tell me about it, because I was telling you what I think what you do is important to lower the temperature of the world and of especially America, because, you know, sexuality in this country has become a tool in a political deflection. Mm-hmm. And it irritates me that we've got 55-year-old white guys telling women how to even start using their bodies. Right. And then never mind all the prejudice that goes along that. So there's one that's not even a prejudice. It shouldn't be because it's just women in general. They're 51% of the population.
It's true. So I amsafezone.com is the website. And what I basically decided to do after going to a number of NSA meetings and things like this, one of the biggest problems that I deal with is I use this word by definition is just ignorance. Sure. And what I mean is they just don't know.
Lack of knowledge.
And they want to know, or they want to know what they don't know, I think is probably a better way of putting it.
Sure.
But they really don't even know what they don't know.
Well, I'll admit, I told people I'm going to be interviewing Jess today. And I go, I've interviewed her before, but it's like what my wife does for a living. She tells me, it makes sense when she says it.
As soon as I walk away.
But then when somebody goes, what does your wife do? She works in oil and gas. And I know what you do, but it's one of those things where, it really doesn't come into my sphere directly. So it's kind of
Sure.
I don't want to be ignorant, but it's one of those things that it just doesn't happen. It just
So one of the bonuses, so how I break down like social justice in a large umbrella way is when we start talking about privilege, right? So sometimes when people say privilege, other people like recoil, like, what are you going to take away from me? But
mostly money. They get really upset about money.
what I think is important and what I equate to privilege is oblivion. So if you are unaware that something happens, you probably have privilege in that category and have never had to think about it.
Okay.
And so what ends up happening when you're oblivious, it's not that you're being irresponsible or that you're trying to be a jerk. It's that you've never had to think about
It's
it.
not
because
willful
you have the
ignorance.
privilege. Right. I don't think so. Now, there are some people who are willfully ignorant. I'm not talking to them.
Yeah, but that's a small chunk.
Right. So I provide job security for me, that small chunk. Yeah. But what I think is important is that the mass middle don't want to be stupid or don't want to be offensive. They just don't even know what they don't know. So what I decided to do was recently in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of media attention specifically around bullying and suicide related to sexuality or gender.
And you can hear all about that in our last podcast. We did a great job on that.
Oh, great. It's true. So Dan Savage, who is a great guy, and we have lots of different political stances, and I would love to argue with him sometime. That would be fantastic. So Dan Savage kind of came out with this campaign, It Gets Better. And the truth is that it gets better for a lot of people, regardless of sexuality and gender.
Sure.
But there are still some people in the world it doesn't get better for. And so it's not that I want to knock that campaign. I just wanted to be able to like explain that it can be more complicated than it just gets better.
Yeah, it's a realistic approach.
Right, because you're by saying, it gets better, kid, don't do that, you're really dismissing pain or complications that are in people's lives. So I'm a big believer that if you've identified a problem, you can't complain or bitch about the problem unless you can actually come up with some part of the solution.
So if you identify a problem, should you remain quiet?
In my opinion, you are complaining unless you are part of the solution.
What if you don't have enough knowledge to offer a solution?
That's fine. You can...
Because it's like, oh my God, there's something on fire over there.
No, I feel like that's different.
Okay.
So this is what I do.
That's why I want to clarify.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So this is my topic area and I'm noticing a problem. So if I don't do anything about it, I'm complaining, right?
Yeah.
Like if anyone can do anything about this problem, it's someone who's in this topic area. That's me. So I can pretend I didn't notice, right? That's a jerk. Or I can do something. So what I decided to do was I put together the I Am Safe Zone program is 3 DVDs. And this was actually really interesting. It's developing kind of my first real product. I have a reflection journal before it, but that is a little different. But it's 3 DVDs that someone can watch individually to educate themselves, like a home study. You can watch it as a group and actually participate in the activities, or you can watch it as like a training of trainers. And specifically because I work for colleges, college campuses, or social workers, or counselors, or police officers, or nurses, they can participate in the educational opportunity either for continuing education units, or they can use it as a baseline to develop their own curriculum for the climate within that particular organization or community or campus, etc. So I launched it, and it goes through 3 different activities. And then there's also a resource disc with some assessment tools and articles and other things like that on it.
Okay, so give me some examples of what they would find if they put down the money and invested. I see how I use that nice word. The invested in the product. What can we expect from that? What's on there? I mean, obviously, the good thing is you can't tell us exactly everything because we don't have enough time on the podcast. So you tell me what's on, like the first disc. What does that deal with?
Sure. So what I decided to do was I went back to when I didn't really know anything about sexuality and gender. Right. So
For me, that was about 18 months ago. and then you came by and we talked.
There was some schooling involved. That is true.
A lot of graphic pictures. It was interesting.
What I think is important to say, and specifically in the speakers field, like we talk a lot about being an expert, and being an expert is tricky because you can get comfortable with your knowledge level. So I know a lot about sexuality and gender, and I'm still learning. Right. So if I back up in my learning process, where did I start? And the biggest problems I've noticed is when I was first learning about sexuality or gender variance, for lack of better words, is that I didn't find me in it. It was always about other people, right? So, and what I thought was important is I wanted to create a training space where people could actually do self-reflection and self-awareness. That's what I'm about. And if you can do self-reflection and self-awareness about your own sexuality and your own gender, then you're going to be able to have a solid foundation to then talk about other people's that might be different than you. So the first disc, and I'll do this quickly.
Sorry, we got plenty of time.
The first disc goes through. I know, I just don't want to bore your listeners.
They believe me. They as long as you use a lot of words that they don't know, they'll be like, "What's going on?" Because it's an interesting topic. I think you may be surrounded yourself by it so much you think it may be boring to others.
Maybe, I don't know. I always listen to your podcasts on the treadmill, so I'm like trying to think of like, would I want to listen to this on the treadmill? Would I flip to Rachel Maddow or something? Right. So anyway, so the first disc goes through language and stereotypes and images, usually mostly media images around heterosexuality, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. And it's really key that heterosexuality is involved because otherwise you're talking about other people.
Well, that's the default.
Right.
For a lot of people.
Right.
Especially the people you're
we
targeting.
live in a heteronormative society.
Yeah.
There's a $10 word for you. And what it basically means is that there's this normalized expectation that of what boys look like, what boys' bodies look like, what men look like, and what masculine people look like. And that they are attracted to this opposite concept.
Oddly enough, in my life, I've only looked like one of those four.
Oh, good job. Good job.
It's like
the mustache helps.
It was the boy, though. It was just I look like a little boy. Then the masculine man. That's maybe.
But the flip of that, because we like clean binaries, right?
We want nice, simple defaults.
Right, his and her towels. That's what I call it. So when we flip this, we get to femininity, what a girl looks like, what a girl's body looks like, what a woman looks like, what a female looks like, and what a feminine person looks like. And then they fit up magic like north and south poles of a magnet. Except it's more complicated than that, right? Like, so if we can begin to understand language and we can understand like the stereotypes and the media images and things that are happening, then it already equalizes people's lack of knowledge or misknowledge, misinformation, or accurate knowledge. It equalizes that space. So that's the first activity. Then we also talk about how power lines up. So a lot of times when we're talking about heterosexuals don't necessarily understand or know that they have what is called heterosexual privilege. And the reason why is they're straight. And in a dominant culture where straight is the expectation, they don't have to think about it.
Right.
Right. Which is why straight people, and there are a few circumstances, but very few, straight people have to come out as straight. But people who are not straight have to come out because the assumption is that they're just straight. Right. So that's kind of what heterosexual privilege is. So if heterosexual...
You mean the straight people don't have to come out?
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have to at all.
Right. But if you're gay, you have to come out.
Right. If you're not, you have to because you have to debunk these assumptions.
And Louis C.K., he's hilarious. He's talking about how men are the only people who feel that they have to define themselves as straight guys because they don't want to be mislabeled.
Well, there's some interesting intersections that end up happening around gender and sexuality, which is why I put them together in the training. So if privilege is straight, then not privileged or less privileged is everything else.
Right.
So then with this particular activity, what I talk about is what I call false hierarchies. So you have straight people high up.
Supposedly.
Right. Yeah. Everybody else underneath.
Yep.
So within everybody else, we make it up. Right. So within everybody else, like gay identified people, which are generally men who are attracted or in romantic relationships with other men, and lesbians who are women who are sexually or romantically attracted to other women.
And that always confused me because I thought, to me, when I hear gay, it's a sex with another sex of similar sex. So I don't separate the two as one is gay and one is lesbian.
So that's politics too. So
right. So that's why I brought it up.
Gay can be used as an umbrella term for everything not straight.
Okay.
And it also generally represents men. Upper class, wealthy, educated white men specifically.
Well, I know I hear the rumor that if they move into your neighborhood, your property values go up. So come on over.
Right, and if the lesbians move in, they open coffee houses.
Do
That's
they?
How that works.
Oh,
right.
I need to move because I need to get to that neighborhood. That is awesome.
So the idea of this false hierarchy, right, is that so if you're not straight, then within not straight, we create this false hierarchy. So gay and lesbians literally set an agenda, and heterosexuals talk about the gay agenda.
Only a small percentage of them. It's mostly a conservative gay agenda. I
think gay people talk about a gay agenda. I think that the language is
so
fine.
there really is. I don't feel there is a gay agenda. I think it's a made up thing that the Republicans do.
No, I think it is a made up thing that dismisses what it is that this privileged group. You're literally proving my point. See, you're smarter than you think you are, Craig.
Well, so I'd have to be.
The concept of the gay agenda is that it's the what the gay and lesbian people are actually fighting for, right?
Okay.
So the idea, though, or the reality of the quote unquote gay agenda is that it is what other privileged groups within the gay and the lesbian community are actually fighting for. So you're talking about white, upper class, educated men and women who are gay and lesbian who are fighting for service in the military, the ability to adopt children, the right to marry.
They want to be just like everybody else.
They want to be just like all the straight people.
Right.
But not all the straight people, the white straight people, the upper class straight people, the educated white people, right? Like
The people who've got it made.
heterosexuals can be homeless too. That is not part of the gay agenda. But
They don't want the right to be homeless?
no.
Hold on a second. I think there's homeless people coming right now. They're upset.
The
They're coming to
siren
take us
outside the
away.
door. What I think is really important to understand is that when we start talking about the quote unquote gay agenda, it's being set by the most privileged people who aren't identified as straight. So that's the false hierarchy. So when you start talking about people who also do not identify as straight, but are not as educated, don't have as much money, aren't white, aren't thin or athletic, or aren't fully able-bodied, aren't U.S. citizens, etc. Like they have other marginalized or subordinated identities.
They got other problems.
They got other shit going on, right? So that stuff actually isn't part of the gay agenda. When people are trying to eat and get a job and get a roof over their heads, there's a base level Maslow hierarchy of needs stuff.
Well, that's a
going
big
on.
Maslow. That's a new one on me.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is it's a pretty common psychological triangle of like what your needs are.
Then I need to bone up on some things.
That just subtly made me
Maslow, I thought
stupid again.
no,
But the idea is like food, shelter.
those are basic human
basic
needs. Human needs,
right?
Just
So, like marriage, military service, and adoption. I'm not saying those aren't important,
but they're first
it's-
world problems.
But it's exactly right. It's like exactly a first world, upper class, privileged problems.
Right.
And what's interesting is that if you are of primarily dominant identities, you have privilege. You've never thought about it that way. So somebody right now is like a first world problem. What are you talking about? Like, for example, when I was downloading an app the other day and it was taking a really long time and I was like, ugh, my Galaxy tablet is so slow. That is a first world problem because there are other people who are trying to eat.
Right.
Right.
They're trying to, not even trying to eat, they're just trying to make sure that they live to the end of the day.
Right. And I mean, there are people in first worlds as well who also are trying to eat. So right, so the first disc actually gets to really kind of the language and the hierarchy and power and how this works. And it's an interactive and fun program, right?
Well, give me an example of something interactive on that. Is it
Well, how the activity actually works is they walk around the room and fill out flip chart paper. And then I pull all the flip charts to the front and then process the language and the images that have come up.
I do. It's something because I do that with generations. It's something similar. What I do is deal with the stereotypes by asking them what do you think about these people, just have them say stuff, positive or negative.
Right.
I started off with usually I start off with negative things only because you do that. It allows them to say what they want.
Exactly. And I mean, when I do this in work settings, you have to be conscious of like workplace dynamics
And
things
HR
like that.
appropriate things.
Right.
But
And when I'm talking about sex and gender, that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
And depending on who else is in the room, people might censor themselves. So I try to do it in a fairly safe, anonymous way.
But you do start with the stereotypes and then you gather them all up.
Right. And so, I mean, for lack of better words, my 20 years experience, you pull the 5 sheets of paper together at the front of the room, I'm going to be able to help facilitate that conversation. And then what I go for the next step is I try to show other people the conversation isn't actually that challenging to facilitate. It's all you need to be able to do is point out these patterns. What's challenging is that my experience allows me to see the patterns like that.
And deeper.
Right. So, and then I can also, my experience allows me to control the questions, not control, but take in the questions that come in, even though they might be unexpected. I've probably been asked it before.
Right.
So more confidently, maybe that's better. So, but as a training tool, if people watch it enough, it comes with free, like the facilitator guides, the questions, the discussion questions, quiz questions, all that kind of stuff. You really can go and actually lead this conversation yourself. So that's what I tried to do. So that's disc 1. Disc 2 is most people are most unfamiliar with issues related to transgender issues.
That's true.
So,
I mean, I'm telling you like I know, but I mean, when you brought that up, I was like, that would be my biggest thing because I don't know what's appropriate to say.
Right. So
the terms.
Most straight, gay, lesbian, and bisexual people do not understand trans issues. So the second disc is a really simple, clear, and I would like to say hysterically funny program that I developed to help explain the difference between sex, gender, sexual identity, what does this have to do with sexism and heterosexism? And then what else does this have to do as far as the intersections of different identities? I promise it's funny.
I have no doubt. I mean, I have 9 jokes that I'm not going to say because I don't want to offend anybody. And you can do it without offending him because you know what you're supposed to be talking about.
Right, I know what I'm talking about. So that's number 2.
You know the landmines. I don't.
So, well, and I only know landmines because I've walked into them a number of times.
Sure.
So that's number 2. And then number 3 is much more of a self-reflective piece. And it's particularly important to mention this, I think, is that I really questioned myself of using like the third disc as this self-reflective piece because I figured people are going to skip this. People don't like self-reflection. People don't like authentic conversation. We talk about it, but we don't actually like doing it.
Yeah.
And I decided, screw it. In order to actually, the program is called I Am Safe Zone and LGBT Ally Development. And in order for you as an ally, regardless of your gender or sexual identity, in order for you to be an ally for other people, you have to develop yourself. So the third disc, I give certain prompts and people kind of record what I call like bookmarks. It's called Messages I Learned. And so you go through your own life, your own history in confidence with yourself. It's anonymous. We don't like to post it up on the walls or anything. But I want to lead people through their own lives to figure out what messages they learned around their own sexuality, their own gender expression, their own identities. Then I lead them through that process and then they have a conversation. And what I have found in my trainings is that oftentimes it is the first authentic conversation straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans people have ever had regarding their lives to where they are now. It's quite a gift, I think, to share with the other person that you share with. So that's kind of the third disc. And it was interesting to develop an interactive DVD that is based on the user's self-reflection and authentic dialogue with another person.
So how did you get to that? I mean, because you're right, that is unusual.
Yeah, I tried. So we'll see if it works. So far, I'm getting really good feedback. But
what did you do? Because I mean,
physically, what did I do on the DVD?
Not just physically, but I mean, what did you do to develop that system so it is self-reflective, but you're actually doing it?
Yeah. So the program that I do in person, just to kind of give a debrief, if I was sitting in the room with you, so we're going to lead you through. You have a sheet of paper, you divide it into 4 quadrants. I give you 4 different prompts, and at each prompt, you kind of you record, draw pictures, write words, whatever you need to do to bookmark to yourself things that come up around 4 different prompts around sexuality.
So you can remember later on when you...
Right, but it's just for you. It's just your...
Well, yeah, we're not going
to... Right. So then after we
Though I am going to post it on Facebook.
Right. So after you go... I mean, you could, but after you go through all 4, then you pair up with a partner, and you don't have to share any of the information that you bookmarked. But what I have found is that if you create a safe enough space for someone to actually lead themselves through their own history, then when they come out of that process... they're actually much more understanding of how they got where they're at.
Oh, yeah.
And if you understand how you got where you're at, then you can actually have a conversation with someone else who also is in the same room. So they are also more understanding of where they're at. So there's no guilt or shame.
And frustration.
Right. Or like people worried that they have the wrong answers or like that they're somehow going to fail a test. Like just talk.
Or they're going to take the test and find out they are gay.
Right. Or that they're straight. Or
whatever.
There's some jerk or something like this. Like, I don't believe, like, how homophobic are you? Like, we're all homophobic, regardless of whether we identify as straight or not straight. So it's either internalized or externalized. So by being able to figure out who you are and how you got to be who you are, then the gift is a conversation with someone else. And what ends up happening when I break that conversation, like, okay, let's wrap up, is that people genuinely are filled with like this authentic joy. And so then I remind them, this is free. You could have these conversations with your friends, your partners, your families, your spouses, your coworkers, your students. You could actually do this on your own. But we live in a culture that doesn't encourage self-reflection or authenticity. No. We wear the t-shirts, but we don't always do it.
Yeah, the bumper sticker to get the t-shirt.
Exactly. It's like coexist.
And we use all the lingo, because that's what I hate, that authentic thing. It's like, you need to be your authentic self. And it's like, well, what you're really saying is you need to be your authentic self that people can digest.
Right.
Think
of this context where we're at right now, right? So, Jessica, be your authentic self, but like, try not to cuss during this interview and like.
I did not say that. You said shit already, and I didn't even say anything.
I know. Good job.
And I just said shit.
So
great. Now we're all saying shit.
Shit. Shit. Okay, you can edit all this out.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
But what I think is so funny is like, I mean, so when you go and get your CSP, right? Like, I mean, I really was very concerned about what to wear. I'm at NSA, I'm in front of my peers, but I also feel like I'm sending a message to other people that you can look like me and be considered a professional speaker.
Well, I don't know what your self-image is, but you look like a normal person.
Well, I appreciate that.
I don't know.
But
that's weird. I mean, because I have self-image issues like everybody else has self-image issues.
But there's, I mean, so I do social justice work, right? So like tattoos, age,
I think
gender, size.
I think more people
topic area.
I think more people are going to be uncomfortable with your topic than the way you look, because I think at this day and age, tattoos are not nearly as unusual as they used to be. It used to be only for the toughies, the people who came from prison, the bikers,
right.
And now, I mean, there's people who are all normal quote normal people.
The point isn't necessarily to like deconstruct normal as much as it is for people to understand what's feeding their sense of normality, right?
Okay.
So on the DVD, this is actually really cool, I think, because I think it worked. So the way that the actual third DVD works is that you have like my instructions and setting the pace, and then I do the prompts. So as a participant, you need like 5 minutes to be able to like do your own bookmarks. So I actually have a counter clock on the DVD that counts down 5 minutes, and I play music during it, right? So you don't have to hit pause because I didn't want you to have to start the DVD over. So then it comes back to me. I do another prompt, another 5 minutes, another prompt, another 5 minutes, another prompt. Then instead of another 5 minutes, there's a counter clock for 30 minutes. So pair up with a partner and talk. And then I give, throughout the 30 minutes, I give some discussion prompts as well. But you really, by that point, aren't going to need the discussion prompts because you're so excited to talk, typically. Even introverts really have been able to find this space as like, it's about getting comfortable where you're at instead of being worried about not saying the right thing. So they're able to have this really authentic conversation for the first time. So it seems to be working, and I'm getting good feedback. But I, of course, am open to more feedback. It's my favorite activity. So that's the third disc.
So, and now I watched you develop this because we're Facebook pals.
Woo!
And you post a lot of stuff about what you're doing, and you ask for people's opinions, and you do. So, when you were developing this, making this product, what were some of the things you had to do to gather it all together? Because to me, it seems like a lot of work.
Well, I thought it was going to be a lot of work too. But when so we were at a conference together, right? You were in Dallas.
I was not.
You were not?
I was not in Dallas.
How did I function without you? So I was at a conference.
My spirit was there, apparently. The state of Texas carried you through.
So I went to an NSA event in Dallas. It was called Monetize Your Message. And I went totally begrudgingly because it's the capitalism business side of this business that is really, really hard for me.
And myself.
So I went, but I needed the education points to finish up my CSP application. And what's even worse is the conference is in my hometown where I went to high school. So I actually was like...
Nothing like dredging up old skeletons and feelings.
Exactly.
Yay.
I'm like, thanks. I only go back to Texas for murder trials and funerals. And evidently an NSA conference.
And usually it's in that order.
Yeah, it's true.
Murder trials and funerals.
So I was there. And one of the messages that I got from Brendan Burchard was that there's all of these like products and social media avenues, all these kind of things, and you totally do not have to do them. And if you don't, it's like not getting on the boat that is headed for the new world. So you don't have to do it.
Yeah, because Europeans are doing fine right now.
You don't have to, but if you would like to make it to the new world, you might want to start. And that really like stuck with me, and in combination with other things that I know about social change and people that I look up to and things like this, I decided like, okay, so what I call it is dance with the one that brung you. So if I'm going to have a product, I'm going to go to where I started. And I started doing LGBT education before I started broadening it out to social justice issues. I really was just focused there. And I just, Dan Savage's campaign, It Gets Better, had come up, and I'd been annoyed that I really wish I could say it gets better for every single human being all the time, always. And that's a really privileged thing to say because it just doesn't for some people. So that had been rattling around. So I kind of connected the dots and I was like, okay, I got to do this. So a friend of mine who works at a medical school in Texas happened to call around the same time as well. And his medical school, it's really hard to pull people together to do a training, and they were interested in doing a safe zone training or LGBT education of some kind, but they wanted to do some kind of webinar based thing because people could do it on their own because they can't, all the doctors and med students don't have time to come together because of the way the school works. So all these things kind of came together, and I was just like, I'm going to make a DVD. I'm going to make a DVD Safe Zone program. This is what I'm going to do. I made it up. I made up the prices. I made up what it was called. I decided 3 of the programs that I do frequently on college campuses. I was like, these will work. I looked at my calendar. So the conference was in February. So I looked at my calendar, and that March, I was doing a pre-conference workshop at a conference with a pretty progressive audience, typically. And what I think is really interesting is that just because you're progressive or liberal does not mean that you know anything about sexuality or gender.
No.
And if you do gender work and sexuality, like myself, it doesn't mean you're done. You still have a lot to learn. So I thought this would be a really great audience because I'm more likely to get challenged verbally than possibly offend people into silence because I wanted that interaction, right? And it's a quote unquote safe conference to push the envelope, etc. So I called the conference organizer and I said, can I record the pre-conference I'm doing? They said yes. Great. Went on Craigslist, looked up to see if I could find, congratulations, by the way, your list.
Not my list.
Really popular.
Well, it's really popular with people who have jobs that can usually get you thrown in jail. I mean, if you need someone to do illegal activity, go to Craigslist.
Or if you need a cheap camera crew.
Oh, no. Wedding video. I found out that wedding videographers are the best ones to get because, A, their prices are super low.
Yeah.
And they do just as good as these other guys that charge like $5,000.
Yeah. So I posted an ad and didn't get a response. And I decided to go looking for ads and found a guy who happened to live in the same town as the conference. Called him up and said, here's the deal. This is the kind of work I do. This kind of budget I have. I know it's way under what most people charge, but this is what I got. Because literally that is the money that I had at the time. Oh, are you interested? And he said, yeah, sounds great. Totally need the work. So I got 2 cameras with their own lighting or whatever to come in, and they videotaped the entire pre-conference. When I started the pre-conference, I told everybody what was going on.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Got the permissions to use them, but also got their barriers. Like, you can't use my face, or I'd prefer not to be in the video at all. So we got all that done up front. And then I just pretended the cameras weren't there. And I led the pre-con like I normally would. And then that same guy from Craigslist then edited it down to 3 DVDs. Then I went through my hard drive on my computer because, again, I have the privilege of having this information, right? Like, you don't do this every single day. I do. I have all kinds of stuff on my hard drive.
Can you imagine if I did it every single day?
You could. You could.
That would be kind of a screwed up. The way I approach things, I'm a little blunt, so it might be a little harsh. I may shame them into silence.
It's possible. So anyway, so I have a really big hard drive that's got a lot of LGBT.
It's not the size of the hard drive; it's what's on it.
It's true. It's true.
So
it's quality and big. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so I went through and I made up a resource disk. And so that's the 4th thing. So it's every assessment tool that I have. It's all the articles I've ever written and other things that other people have written, so all compiled into one place.
And then that's why I wanted to know the resource disk, which is the last disk.
Yep.
That we haven't talked about. That's got all kinds of articles and
everything.
But are they articles by you or articles by you and others?
Some are by me. Some I think are the best articles written on the topic, and they're the ones that I forward out to people all the time. There's really, really unique pieces that I have found that I haven't seen anybody else ever write on. I just put them all in the same place.
Well, I think you've got your bases covered,
right?
Definitely on this.
So then, after I did all the filming and then he did the editing, then I did a pre-sales launch, and I figured because I've never had a product before and I'm an anti-capitalist entrepreneur, I did a pre-sales launch to see how many I might possibly sell, right? Sell. What did I say?
Sale.
Yeah, sell.
That's how anti-capitalist you are. You don't even like saying the word.
I don't.
That was me being a jerk.
I conveniently sold enough to actually cover the cost of producing the discs.
Perfect.
So then I was like, well, that's convenient. So I didn't have to refund anybody's money. And then I actually went and produced it. So you can get it. And for any of your listeners, can I offer a special deal?
Can you? Let's do it.
Anybody who's interested. So I'm selling them here at NSA. So I want any NSA member, and I actually mentioned this on the diversity peg as well, but anybody listening to this podcast is also available to it. But if you go to iamsafezone.com/deal, then you get 50% off the price.
Or you can just, or you can email me as well, Craig. It's craigprice.com, and I will forward it on to you. And
because if you're on a treadmill, you're like, what was that website?
Right, and so I certainly appreciate that, and I really do think that's why I've had you on twice, is because I really do think what
you have a crush on me.
Well, besides that, and the good thing is my wife probably turned this off about 5 minutes ago because she could hear me wrapping it up. She's like, "Oh, he's done. I'll move on to the next one." But no, I really do think that, especially nowadays, it's been taken and distorted and twisted and used in such a horrible, ugly way.
It's become this weird political wedge issue when we're talking about people's lives.
And it's what they're asking for is not unreasonable. Now, I'm sure I have some people who just turned it off and got mad, and I don't care. But I think that doing what you do and offering programs like this helps, like I said, cool the temperature down and at least educate people. They can still not like it, and that's their decision. But but I'd rather them be educated and not like something than just ignorantly.
Yeah. One of the great lessons, actually, and you can actually get this from Mother Teresa, how non-controversial is that? But one of her biggest lessons I've learned from her letters and journals and things like this is that you have to question what you believe in. So regardless of what you believe in, regardless of your politics, faith, or lack thereof, whatever it is you believe in order for you to truly believe in that, it needs to survive your own questioning process.
Yeah, blind faith is dangerous. Faith is great, but blind faith can be extremely dangerous.
So regardless of what it is, like, take a second, figure it out, super question it, and if you come back to it, as Mother Teresa would say, because she would question her faith all the time and her God, so as she would come back to her faith, it would be 10 times stronger because it survived her own questioning process. So if we can all do that, and specifically when we're talking about sexuality and gender, we all have one. So it's not an extra thing. It's not an othering thing. We all have a sense of sexuality. We all have
more
a
than one
physical body. We all have a gender. And so if we can be able to understand who we are and how we got to where we're at, whether you like it or not, you're already a better ally.
Well, I hope I am an ally. I feel that you're my ally.
Friends for EBS.
BFFs.
BFFs. High five.
OMG.
OMG. High fives.
Thanks a lot, Jessica.
You're welcome. Thanks. And I have to admit, can I admit something? I have a little crush on you too.
Everybody does. That's our show for this week. I want to thank Jess for coming on. Please subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, like the Facebook page, and you can follow our exclusive guest list and read all their tweets at Reality Check Pod on Twitter. If you have any questions, comments, or guest suggestions, email me, Craig at SpeakerCraigPrice.com. See you next week.